Hey, this says I'm live. Can you hear me? How do I check? Oh, here we go. Let me make sure I got the right mic. Yeah, let me check to make sure I've got. Oh, where is it? Oh, you can hear. Good. All right. Yay. Hello. Haven't done this in a while, and I'm doing it a little bit of a different way than I used to do it. I used to do it on Google Hangouts, and now I'm doing it straight through YouTube. And I thought I had it set up right, but then I realized, I'm not 100% sure. So we're trying this, and let's see. And it's a little dark over here, isn't it? But I'm not gonna fix that. Let me move this up so that when I do this, oh, that's 10 times worse, isn't it? Let's see. Yes, live chats with people who don't know what they're doing. How do I look? There we go. So hello, everyone. Let me tilt my mic upwards so that you can hear me better. How's that? There are people chatting on the YouTube channel. There are people leaving comments on my newsletter page. That's lovely. And there's nothing on Twitter. Yeah, Twitter sucks. Just kidding. I actually quite like Twitter. It's the Nazis I could do without there. The reason I'm doing this, like I said, I used to do like a Q&A live a long time ago. Golly, years and years ago. And that started turning into a lot of trouble, actually, to be honest. It was taking up a lot of my time, and it was fun, and I think folks enjoyed it, but it was sort of impeding on the rest of my life, and so I decided to stop doing it. And that was a few years ago. I think now it's a lot easier to do. I left my glass of water in the other room. Perfect. What I need is an assistant, but that's not going to happen. It's still something I've wanted to do. It's always been in the back of my mind. And now a lot of people are at home and they're probably, not working as hard as they would at the office. And maybe some folks can't work. Some, I'm not sure what everybody's situation, what all the different possibilities are. I don't want to start naming reasons people might be home. I might leave off something important. So the thing is, we do have a lot more people home right now because of the coronavirus. And if you're looking for something, I've been tweeting about, watch Crash Course or do this or that. And then, you know what, let's just do something live. It'll be fun. And if it turns out something people like, I can keep doing it. I can try to do different things. I've been sort of brainstorming a list of stuff I can do. One, and I'll get to my dry cough in a minute. No, I'm not positive for the virus. I don't think. It doesn't seem like it, but I haven't been tested because nobody's been tested in America. But I'll get back to that in a sec. But I've been making a list of stuff I might want to do. And I was thinking, what would be fun would be to take my phone and do this mobile, go out like to the goat pen and talk to the goats and show you folks the goats. And then I realized my Wi-Fi won't reach that far, I don't think. I'm going to see if I can find some way of getting it to go that far. It's not that it doesn't reach that far, it's that the signal's really, really weak and I can't depend on it. And I could do this through my cellular data plan, but every month we come like 4K away from going over. And in fact, this month we did go over because there are 3 of us on my plan, my wife and my daughter and I. And so it just sometimes, the phones do stuff in the background and then you look and you've got nothing left. So I don't want to overwhelm that. I will figure this out. I'd love to like walk over to the goats and show you how they live and what they do, and maybe even the horses. The horses are about 3 times farther away, so I have to figure that one out. So I'll be reading the comments in a minute. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask. But just I don't talk about myself much on the blog at all. And in the newsletter I do sometimes. It just depends on what's going on. But just a quick update on what's going on with me. I'm still writing for Sci-Fi. Still doing the newsletter twice a week. That's at badastronomy.substack.com. I should probably, if I were organized, I'd have it, oh, wow, this is hard to do right here in the upper right. Wow, that's super hard to do. Ooh, look at all my books. Ooh, they're all shiny. Can I get maybe I can change the aperture. Nah, it's not working. So yeah, I'm still writing and everything's fine. The impact that this virus has on my life personally is no better, no worse than anybody else. I've got some older folks around and I've got to be careful. We're all trying to be careful, not going out as much. I went to physical therapy this morning. Some of you may know I had an operation on my knee around Halloween last year for a little calcification, a little bone thingy that decided to grow in an old injury that I had back in the 90s. And that was impinging on a tendon, very painful. And so I had that removed and I'm still going to physical therapy for it. And, I talked to my PT about that and she had gloves on and she wipes down the table and changes the pillowcases and they're being very careful. So we talked about that. And I'm physically I'm doing pretty well. I just got off the bike. Do I look flushed? I've got like red patches on me. I was on the bike for 20 minutes, which is amazing to me because up until 3 weeks ago, I couldn't do that at all. It was last summer before I could bend my knee enough. I mean, last summer is when it started hurting so much I couldn't bend my knee enough to be on the bike. Ugh. So it's been a while and I'm quite pleased, being on the bike for 20 minutes, even though I wasn't pushing that hard. So, I'm exercising and it occurred to me, actually, everybody's giving advice about what to do. You're isolating at home, you're quarantined at home. What do you do? And I don't think I've seen anybody say, exercise a little bit. If you can, if you can't walk or your arms don't work or whatever. I mean, I understand that. Talk to a doctor. Boy, talking to a doctor, that's going to be tough right now, isn't it? But, seek out some professional help, see what you can do. I always feel a lot better after I exercise. And I wrote about this in my newsletter today. People are saying, what can I do at home? And everybody's giving advice. Everybody I know, not everybody I know, it's an exaggeration, but a lot of the people I know work from home. They're writers, science communicators, whatever. They're sitting in their home office just like I am. This is my house, maison de billet. And they're giving advice, and a lot of it I saw was really rigid. Set yourself a schedule, get dressed for work, shower, do everything you would do to go to work. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, do that, but you might want to be flexible. You might find that you're uncomfortable that way. You're not as efficient. It's weird being at home and being ready for work. So what I wrote in my newsletter today was the only advice I have is just be flexible about it. Try different things. When I started working from home, I was terrible at it. But within about 6 months, I realized that this was the greatest thing ever for me. I hate going to an office. I used to dread driving into work and finding a place to park and, what do I do for lunch and just all those things. I hated that. It wasn't for me. And working from home, setting my own hours works perfectly. There are days like today. I haven't written anything for the blog today or the newsletter. I've done other work. I've been doing some other stuff, but it's pretty rare for me not to actually sit down and write something. And it's only 3:00 my time. I've still got 4 or 5 hours if I feel like writing something, so I might. But that's what I mean by flexibility. There are days I don't write. It's rare, but it happens. And there are days I don't write till the afternoon. Like I all morning I'm like, Trump politics, something's got me upset. But then, a couple of pieces of chicken, potato chips, a cup of coffee, lunch, and I'm ready to go. So, find what works for you. I think that's the most generic advice that is the most useful that I can give you. And I wrote about that in my newsletter today. So if you get my newsletter, if you don't, on Twitter, I tweet about it quite a bit, and you can find links to it. Just look up, Bad Astronomy Newsletter. You'll find it. It's free on Mondays. This is the advertising section of the chat. It's free on Mondays. I send one out every week like that. And on Thursdays, I have a second issue that's for paid subscribers. And that helps me stay alive, basically. Pay my health insurance, and support my family who lives with me here. So paid subscribers are awesome. Thank you. But even if you're not a paid subscriber, if you're just a subscriber, that's wonderful too. I love seeing people come in and wanting to read what I write. I don't know what's wrong with you folks, but I love it. So thank you. What else? Oh yeah, this dry cough I have. About a month ago, a friend came over and we were watching a movie, my wife and I and her, and we're sitting there and watching a movie, and I'm thinking the whole time, yeah, something ain't right. I don't feel right. And by the end of the evening, it was like, yeah, I'm sick. And I don't get sick that often. I get sinus issues or whatever, but just that tickle in the back of the throat and the weird body feeling, the weirdness. And the next day I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm sick. I'm a huge wimp when it comes to my own sickness. And I was just, oh, woe is me. I was a Shakespearean, secondary player. But actually, by the third day, I was fine. I was never feverish, but all those symptoms went away. And then I started coughing, and my nose ran, and then the nose stopped. And it's been a month, and my throat still tickles. It's very irritating. And I'm pretty sure it's just the fact that the weather is changing, sinus issues. I've never had any other symptoms of coronavirus, so I'm pretty sure I'm okay, and I'm trying to keep it that way. On the other hand, a lot of people are going to be infected by this. Don't listen to Trump, who is lying to you constantly. We have not been testing enough people. The number of people who are sick in this country, we do not know. All we know is what's being reported, and we are on exactly the same trajectory as Italy was 10 days ago. You take Italy and you take us, and you shift them by 10 days, and you see that same lovely exponential curve, which means that we are in a heap of trouble. So isolating at home, this is a good thing. This social distancing that everybody's talking about, super important. When you see your governor, your mayor, your senator, your representative saying, go out to bars, go drinking, lick a toilet seat, they are trying to kill you. I don't want to overemphasize that, but if they tell 10,000, 100,000, a million people that, some of those folks are going to get infected and some of them are not going to do very well. So please do not listen to these boneheads. I don't want to swear. But that's all I want to say about all of that. Unless you guys have questions. That's it. That's my update. That's why I'm doing this. I got nothing else, honestly. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Oh, look at all these questions in the YouTube room. Let me go to my newsletter, folks, here real quick. And, there are a few things here. Here's a good question from Rob Deemer. I think you're great on Twitter. That's because I am. Thank you, honestly. With balancing your comments on astronomy as well as your own thoughts on our society. Oh, I don't know if I agree with that. I seem to talk a lot more about politics than astronomy, but them's the times now. Do you put much thought as to what to post and what not to on Twitter or other platforms? Yeah, that's an easy one to answer for other platforms, because on the blog, it's astronomy. And when I was on Slate, Slate is a much more political venue. You go there and it's politics and feminism and all sorts of stuff. And I used to write about whatever I want. They were really good about just letting me write about whatever I want. I wrote about climate change, politics, anti-vaxxers, whatever bad science I wanted to. A lot of astronomy. Sci-fi is a genre website, and I don't want to dump all that stuff onto people who are coming to the site to read about science and science fiction. And so that's why I don't do that so much anymore. And that's another reason why I started the newsletter, because on the newsletter, I can say whatever I want about whatever topic I want. And so you'll see me talking politics there quite often, and climate change. As far as Twitter, no, I just talk about whatever, I think carefully about the way I phrase things, and I think carefully about what I'm going to say. Am I saying something that is easily misinterpreted? Am I saying something that isn't sourced? Am I spreading a rumor that isn't true? And am I saying something ableist? That's like one of the isms that I'm having the hardest time with. I consider myself a feminist. I consider myself not a racist, one of the ones that's like, I just said something about this the other day on Twitter. I think it was. It's like there's just everybody's a little bit racist. We all have our prejudices and we're raised that way. Whatever. The point is, you figure them out. You see that about yourself, and you go, you know what? That sucks. That's wrong. I'm not going to do that anymore. You grow and you learn. The problem is, are these aggressive, activist racists like Stephen Miller, say, in the White House, or the president? That's the problem. So you can work with that. And you don't want to say anything that might accidentally trip somebody's own outlook on life. You don't want to say something that is like, hey, somebody reads that and goes, hey, I'm that kind of person that you're making fun of. And so I try really hard not to do that. Doesn't matter how hard you try. It's like not making a typo. You're gonna make a typo. You're gonna say something dumb. I try to minimize that. I try to correct it and own up to it. But other than that, on Twitter, to be honest, the most thought is when I put into something that's a joke, because jokes are grossly misinterpreted. If you have 10 people following you, it's probably not a problem. Right now, I'm at 600,000, something like that. And if 0.1% of the public out there reads that joke and misinterprets it, no matter how carefully I phrase it, there's going to be some small fraction that's going to misinterpret it. And then that turns out to 100 angry people yelling at you. And it's like, that's a lot. And then if I do something that really is stupid and I've said something dumb, it could be 1,000 people. And that really sucks. So I think very carefully about my jokes, and then I post them anyway and get in trouble. And it's funny too, because a lot of friends are women. A lot of my friends I follow on Twitter are women comedians. And oh boy, watching their comments, isn't that a joy? You should listen to women. If you don't think women get death threats, get rape threats, get all that kind of stuff, you should read comments on Twitter from women comedians. And I don't get that, but when I post a joke, I get people explaining the joke back to me, saying the same joke back to me, telling me why my joke doesn't make sense because it's not based on fact. And of course, these people are all what we call wrong. But as a man too, I get men explaining the joke to me. It's like mansplaining, but I can only imagine what it's like trying to be a woman doing the same sort of thing. So I think carefully about jokes, but that's about it. An astronomy question by Jason. Any speculation on why our solar system doesn't have any super Earths? Yes, I've written about this. We know of several different kinds of planets that orbit stars. And you look at our solar system, and there are sort of Earth-sized planets. And there's a joke in the exoplanet community, science outreach community, that we should call them Venus-sized planets. Because when people think Earth-sized, they think Earth-like. And then they think, hey, it's Earth, it's got life. No, calm down. It's just Earth-sized. It's the same size as the Earth. Venus is roughly the same size as the Earth. Mars is, half the size of half the diameter of the Earth. But you could still say it's in the ballpark compared to, say, Uranus, Neptune, Jupiter, and Saturn, which are huge, these gas giants. And it turns out there are other types of planets in between sort of the size of the Earth and the size of Neptune. Off the top of my head, I can't remember how big Neptune is. It's 4 or 5 times the diameter of the Earth. And it turns out physically, in between those two sizes, you get a change in the kind of planet. The smaller planets tend to have atmospheres that are thinner. Venus has a thick atmosphere, but you look at Mars and Earth, and under special circumstances, they might have really thick atmospheres, we think. But when you get up to about twice the size of the Earth, about 5-10 times the mass, something like that, we think, and I'm not an expert on this, I may be saying something wrong, and I'm really generalizing here, but you get to the point where it can start drawing in a lot more atmosphere and holding on to it. And so it starts to grow really rapidly, and it becomes something more like Neptune. And we call these super Earths if they're sort of closer to Earth, and mini Neptunes if they're closer to Neptune. And the weird thing is, they're the most common type of planet we're finding. And it's weird because it's not the easiest planet to find. Jupiters are the easiest to find because they're big, right? And they have a big effect on their star. If they transit the star and block some of the light, you see a big dip. If they're actually tugging on the star and making it move in a circle, that's more noticeable the bigger the planet. So these super Earths are harder to find than these Jupiters, and yet we're finding more of them. And what that's telling us is that the universe makes a lot more of these. Why? Why are super Earths so common? That's still being figured out. But that's also an interesting thing because our solar system doesn't have one. Why don't we have a super Earth? There's this big jump between Earth and Neptune. There's nothing in between them. It's possible if we have another planet way out past Neptune that it's a super Earth or a mini Neptune. We don't know. But even that's still weird because that's really far away. There's nothing in closer to the sun. A couple of ideas. One is that there was one or two maybe when the solar system started settling down and the planets themselves started becoming what they are today, and they got ejected by Jupiter. There is some evidence that there must have been, or there could have been, another giant planet out in the outer solar system with the other four, because of the way Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune have moved in the past. They tug on each other gravitationally, and early on in the solar system, Jupiter and Saturn kind of moved out. Uranus, Neptune moved in. Uranus, Neptune may have actually swapped orbits. It was really kind of weird back then. And there are models that show that if you put a fifth planet in there, it actually explains the way the planets are ordered now. And that's kind of neat. So maybe we did have one back then. There's another idea that several of them formed basically where Earth, Mars, or Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars are, sort of in the inner solar system. There were a bunch of them, but they interacted gravitationally, and Jupiter poked at them with its gravity, and they collided and blew apart. And some of that debris scattered, some of it fell into the sun, and then some of it, what was left, the meager remains, formed the planets we have today. So it could be that the Earth is a second generation planet. We used to be part of a much larger planet, that got basically exploded by collisions. And that's why we don't have super Earth now. Pretty cool. You can find all this. If you go online and look for that kind of stuff, you can find this information. It's pretty neat. Let me go to the YouTube chat room, see what you guys are talking about. Let's see. Hi, Judy. Judy Schmidt is here, folks. She is Space Geck on Twitter. And is that, I see your avatar. It's really tiny. I don't even know. I don't know what half my friends look like. It's weird. Some of these people I talk to a lot on Twitter or whatever, I don't know what they look like. I don't look them up. So it's kind of funny. It's like, oh, look at that. So let's see. Corona means crown. Yes, that is true. You can see a corona around the sun. That is the halo around the sun during a solar eclipse. There's also an effect called a corona, which you can see during the day, and you get little tiny water droplets or ice crystals in the air, and the sunlight coming through that goes through all kinds of horrifying mechanical or optics stuff, and you get these rings of light around the sun like a rainbow, but they can be different colors like pink and green and yellow. It's very strange. That's also called a corona. I think it also, could it mean halo? Maybe, but I think from the Latin it means crown. Hi there from Bonn, Germany. Hello, Raoul. Hello from the UK. Hey there, Australia. Wow. We are international. We are all people sequestered in place internationally. Tedsworth says the lighting doesn't look all that bad dark. That's good. I did an interview the other day for BBC Scotland, and at some point that will come out. It has nothing to do with the virus or anything, so nobody's talking about it. And I had a really hard time getting to lighting in here, right? It was awful. I was getting a ton of light from a window over here, nothing from over here, and this glow from overhead, and lighting is such a pain. It's one of the most impressive things that you don't think about when you watch TV in a movie. Whereas once you've made TV or done something like that, and then you see when something is lit well, and you're like, ooh, that was well done. Watch Stargate Universe, one of the best lit shows I have ever seen. The lighting is a whole character on that show. It's amazing. Oh, well, Kevin Sipple Jr. asks, I would love to hear you talk about your thoughts on the obstacle that Starlink poses to astronomers and whether you feel like the cost is worth the benefits. I have approximately 75 billion pages of notes on Starlink. Starlink is the massive constellation of internet satellites that SpaceX is putting up. And they're a problem. They're a serious problem to astronomy. I mean, there's no arguing against that. There's no denying that. These are a major problem. And the more that go up, the worse it's going to be. These are in a few 100-kilometer orbits, and they're bright enough that they can be seen by eye. Now, Elon Musk and SpaceX have claimed they're going to raise them up and they'll get much fainter. The problem is the calculations I've seen don't make them get faint enough. Even if they get faint enough that you can't see them by eye, that's not, I mean, that's better. You don't go out and see all these. I mean, at first it might be cool to see a bunch of these things moving across the sky. It's always interesting to see a satellite. But when there are hundreds of them or thousands of them, that's going to be a problem. And naked eye isn't the problem. The problem is our telescopes are on the ground looking up at the sky. And if these things are constantly screaming through, especially if they're bright, it's going to be very, very difficult to observe. We have techniques that can remove objects from observations, but it's not perfect. And I've done it. I mean, we get things called cosmic rays, and these are little subatomic particles, and they hit the detector and they leave a streak. It looks like a little, a satellite trail or a meteor streak or something like that. And you can get around that by taking several images. And a cosmic ray will hit in one spot in one image, another spot in another image. And what you do is when you take all these images, you take an odd number of them and you take the median. And if you might remember back to your middle school or high school math, you had the average, the median, and the mode. Remember that? The average is you add up all the numbers in a series and then divide them by the number of numbers in the series, and that gives you your average. And the mode, I think, is the mode is the most common number in the series. So if you have repeated numbers, the mode is the most. The median is the value at which half of the numbers are above that value and half are below. That's why you need an odd number, because you have that value plus the same number on either side. So if you have 5 on either side or 4 on either side, that one in the middle gives you an odd number total. And so what you do is you basically look and see what that value is and replace that value for every pixel in the image. And so stars which don't change, galaxies which don't change, and they're giving you the same number of photons per second. When you take a median of all those images, you should get roughly the same number, statistically speaking. Whereas if a cosmic ray hits your detector, it's very bright in one spot, and that gets removed when you meet what's called median filtering. That's a very, very brief description. I've written about it, pardon me, on my blog. Oh, sorry, do the Dracula cough. There's nobody around. Here, tell you what. Look what I have. Hand sanitizer. This is from traveling. If you follow me on Twitter, you may notice I was talking to Carrie Byron from Mythbusters years ago. I did a thing with them in Canada, and they were signing autographs at the end. And when everybody was gone, they pulled out the hand sanitizers. Like, oh, isn't that a good idea? And so I've always had some with me ever since. So there you go. So median filtering. I've written about it on my blog. If you search on the blog, if you go to Google, you can do a site search. I don't think a lot of people know about this, and I know this is a lot of tangents. You can do site : and then the name of a website and then a word, and it'll search for that word on that site. Just look up site search on Google, and you can site search median, MEDIAN, yes. And I have a long description of it. That works for a lot of things. You have to be careful with using it. You can't just apply it. You have to be careful when you do it. But for Starlink satellites, that won't work very well. For one thing, if you have a couple of them that cross, their paths might cross, for example, or when you have a streak going all the way across, you're more likely to hit an object of interest. If you have a cosmic ray that hits right next to or on that trail, or you have a trail going through in one image and a bunch of cosmic rays that hit in the same spot in another image, much harder to filter that out. The other problem is that if the Starlink satellite's really bright, even if it's not visible to the naked eye, it's still very bright to a big telescope. And we've got these gigantic survey telescopes that are taking long exposures. And if a satellite streaks across that, it could actually saturate the detector, fill it up. It's like filling up a bucket. And when that happens, it is much, much harder to get rid of that signal, or that noise, I should say, and see the signal underneath it. There are techniques you can do, but they're a pain in the butt. And it's interesting. It's interesting. What do we do about this? Musk has said he will work with astronomers. He's tried to make them, he made one of them darker, but there's not a lot of evidence that that's helping. They want to work with astronomers, great. But this is an issue. The question of whether these satellites are needed or not, I don't know. There are claims that this is going to give internet to the world and to places where it doesn't get and all that stuff. Maybe. And there are arguments for and against that. I'm not going to get into them here because I haven't read up on all of it. And there are some interesting issues. Are only people who are wealthy going to be able to afford this, or at least people who aren't impoverished? We want to be able to get past this digital divide where people who have money can get the internet and people who don't can't. Is it going to help? I don't know. I haven't read everything I need to read, so I don't want to give an opinion yet. There's tons of information out there. You can read about that. So all I am right now is I've read a few things. I've been thinking about it. I've not thought about it enough. But I just want to tell you what the astronomy problems are with that now, let alone the Kessel effect, not the Kessel run, the Kesseling. Oh, what is it? The one in the movie Gravity, where one satellite hits another one, you get an explosion of debris. That debris hits more satellites. That's an interesting problem, and so that's something we have to worry about. Satellites need to be able to be decommissioned. And so I don't necessarily see that yet with how they're going to do that with these satellites. Maybe that's all set up. Like I said, I have not been researching this enough, and I don't want to talk out of my hat, which I'm not wearing. But I will push my glasses up so that I can see. Judy saying, "Bring the goats in." Yeah, no. They don't smell good. They fart a lot, and they pee and poop a lot. And I'm not bringing them into my room. Yeah, people are saying Wi-Fi repeater. This is from the beginning of this chat. Yeah, I saw the Arnold Schwarzenegger video where he has his a mule, I think it is, a donkey or a mule, I'm not sure which, and what looks like a mini horse looks a lot like my horse, Tiny Elvis, although his looks more like a little Sebastian from Parks and Rec. And there are issues with Arnold. I loved his movies in the 80s and 90s. There's some other issues with him, but his video about that, my first thought was, oh my God, who's cleaning this up? And I assume he has staff that does that for him, because I will guarantee you those animals were making a mess. Just reading this down. Neptune has 17 Earth masses. Thank you, Van Houten 64. Diameter is 4 times the Earth. So I can never remember if it's 4 or 5. And Uranus is a little bit, let's see, Uranus is bigger but less massive or something like that. I don't worry about this kind of stuff because I know I can always look it up if I have to write something about it. So Carlos Tizone or Tizone or Tizzone with 2 Z's. I don't know. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. People ask me what I'm scared of. And I'm always terrified when I'm moderating a panel. I love moderating panels at Comic-Con and stuff like that. Terrified of mispronouncing somebody's name. I have done it once. It was awful. She corrected me. Oh my God, that was the worst moment ever. If I could have burst into flame, I would have right then. So Carlos is asking, if a star dies within a nebula, does the shape of the nebula change? Yes, it depends on the nebula. When stars explode, for example, if you're in a star-forming nebula, a gas cloud that makes lots of stars, some of them are going to be massive, maybe, and they will blow up. They will go supernova and explode. This debris expands outwards, and it slams into that gas. And as it does, it sort of snowplows its way through it. There's a phase called the snowplow phase, where it's ramming through this gas, and the gas is building up in a shell around the supernova. It slows down the debris, the expanding debris. And when the amount of material that's been plowed up is about the same mass as the amount of material doing the plowing, that's about when things reach an equilibrium, very roughly. And so the nebula very near the star changes a lot. If you look at supernova 1987A, which was a star that blew up and the light reached us in February 1987, there's this ring of material around it. There's actually a very strange sort of hourglass, can I do this? An hourglass-shaped nebula around it like that. And there's a sort of a thick ring around the middle. I studied that for my PhD. The supernova debris is actually starting to hit that material. And eventually, when the denser stuff slams in, the low density stuff moves the fastest. You give a certain amount of energy to something, the lower mass stuff is going to accelerate the hardest. This low mass stuff is hitting it when the more dense stuff slams into it. It's going to obliterate that ring. It's going to be a hell of a thing. And I'm not sure when that's predicted to happen. I don't know what the latest stats are. I haven't really read up on that. But that'll change it a lot. So yeah, it can. Not always. A planetary nebula is the gas that blows out from a star like the sun when it dies. And that's all the outer materials of the star. And what's left is the core of the star. It gets very hot, and it heats up that material. It lights it up with ultraviolet light. And as that material gets far enough away, it gets low enough density that the light kind of just passes through it, and it fades away. So the star kind of dies, and the gas just fades away. That's what's going to happen to us. So the answer is maybe. Yes, no, maybe. Depends on the situation, which is basically every answer to every problem I ever get. So there you go. Hi from Brazil. Wow, I am not going to try to pronounce your name. Mayra? My Portuguese is terrible in that I don't know any. How soon after the Big Bang were planets possible? That's an interesting question, J.R. Staten. Given that heavy elements occur in the Earth's crust, were formed in the core of stars that later went nova, how soon after the Big Bang were planets like Earth possible? Planets like Earth. Now, the first stars formed, I want to say 400 million years after the Big Bang. Is that right? It's some hundreds of millions of years. Once the universe formed, the gas in it was strewn all around and was very hot. So the universe had to cool enough for gas to stick together. When you heat up a gas, all the little dudes, the atoms, bounce around and hit each other and bounce off. You need to have someplace cool enough that it can condense enough to form a star. And that kind of started happening mostly around dark matter. Dark matter formed these. This is how we think this is working. I need my friend Sophia here. She's the dark matter astrophysicist. You can find her on Twitter. She's Astro Party Girl, party like particle, PARTI girl. And but you get these filaments of dark matter, and then regular matter would flow into these and form galaxies, and they would cool, and you could form stars. And it took some hundreds of millions of years. And these were stars made entirely out of hydrogen and helium, and it turns out that makes a difference. Stars these days have iron and oxygen and manganese and all kinds of stuff in them, and that traps the heat inside the star. And so you can only get a star so massive before it gets so hot that it tries to blow itself apart. And these days, that's about 100 to 150 times the mass of the sun. But back in the day, when those heavy elements didn't exist, stars could be a lot more massive. And we think that these first generation stars they're called very massive objects, or VMOs. They're called population 3 stars. I hate that one. But we can just call them the first generation of stars. They were all hydrogen and helium. They could be huge, like maybe even 1,000 or more times the mass of the sun, which is that's a noggin scratcher. I don't even know what they would look like. But they blew up and created these heavy elements that seeded the next generation of stars. So, maybe there was enough iron to make solid planets in the second generation of stars, not in the first. And then even then, the second generation of stars may have been smaller. And we're now in the third or fourth generation, although that's not a great way to think of it, because it's sort of a continuous process. There are always stars out there blowing up, always sending their debris into gas clouds as they're always making stars. So it's a continuous process. It's not like generations. But nowadays, it's easy. And we think all stars make planets, or most of them do, or even if it's a fraction, 10%, something like that, they make lots of planets. So probably planets outnumber stars. It's hard to say. I don't know when the first generation. I'm framing the question so that I can try to answer it, and the answer is I'm not exactly sure. Maybe the second generation of stars could have formed planets. I don't know if these first generation stars could have seeded enough iron, silicon, carbon, oxygen into these nebulae around them so that when those nebulae collapse, that next generation of stars could form planets. I don't know, but I bet by the time those stars blew up, a few million years later, maybe by then. And that's actually, come to think, now that I think about it, that's kind of funny. You want to talk about exponential growth. The first generation of stars may have taken hundreds of millions of years, but when they blew up pretty rapidly, and then stars formed from their leftover material, the massive stars formed from that material would have blown up probably in just a couple of million years. Maybe 10, call it 20. Let's give them 20, right? That's still a tiny fraction of the age of the universe now. So we have had, 1,000 generations of massive stars, more, since the first stars formed. So, the universe is now lousy with these heavy elements, but back then it wasn't. But it could be that, it didn't take that many iterations of stars blowing up before you could start forming planets. And we know, come to think of it, the TRAPPIST star, TRAPPIST-1, that has the 7, I think, Earth-sized planets orbiting it, that's an older system than the sun. And we know there's a system that's 10 billion years old. You can get the ages of these, hard to do, but they're many billions of years older than the sun. So they've been around a long time. I should have thought of that first. That would have made this a much less rambling answer. Tell you what, I'm going to go back to the chat room in the newsletter. Oh, I got 4 new replies. Let's look at all these. How does this work? This goes 46, 42, bottom up. There we go. Marilyn Kozak. Oh, hello, Marilyn. I know Marilyn from Virginia. Help. When asked what she wanted to learn while home, my 9-year-old granddaughter responded, parallel universes. Brian Greene is a bit over both our heads. Any good kid-level resources for these complex topics? Wow. I don't know. I don't read enough kids' books, and that's a problem. Emily Lakdawalla from the Planetary Society, Lakdawalla, Lakdawalla, on Twitter, every year posts a kids' books in astronomy roundup around the holidays time, so people can do that. So go to the look up Planetary Society, Emily Lakdawalla. You'll get to her blog. You can go and see what she's written about this. I don't know what else there might be. I don't know if Crash Course Physics did any of that. Certainly Sean Carroll has written about parallel universes. I've got his books here, but I don't know where. My bookshelf is a disaster right now. But Sean Carroll, Carroll, but his stuff's complicated. That's for the educated layperson. I go online and search. I'm sorry, that's the best I can do. I hate to say that. Ashley asks, do you think WR104 will destroy us? I'm sorry for chuckling at that. WR104 is a star that is about halfway, I think about halfway to the center of the, no, it's like 8,000 light years away, something like that. This massive star that is there's a spiral of material around it that I think it's shedding. And it looks like it's definitely going to go supernova. The question is, will it be a gamma ray burst? And if it's a gamma ray burst, it'll send out, basically when a star explodes, called a hypernova, you get a supernova, but there's also these jets of material, these beams that shoot out in opposite directions, plows through that material. And these things they're death rays. Look up gamma ray burst. Go to, here, Crash Course Astronomy. Actually, can I do this? Let me pause myself, because I'm nothing if not self-interrupting, and open up my list of Crash Course Astronomy links, and I will pop it into, I'll reply to her thing with the link. Oh, look at that. That worked. And I'll go to the YouTube chat room where it says say something here, and I'll say GRBs, gamma ray bursts. There, and you can watch that. Not now, because I'm talking. Hey, can't watch 2 videos. It's against the rules. But gamma ray bursts are incredibly powerful explosions. These jets have a huge amount of energy. And if you're within 7,500 light years of one of these things and that beam hits you, you're in a bad way. At that distance, it's not so bad, but the closer you are, the worse it is. And I did a calculation once for my book, Death from the Skies. There it is, orange. That if you're within 100 light years of a gamma ray burst jet, it'll cook your planet. It's like dumping millions of hydrogen bombs on a planet. And that's, literally, that's how much energy is in these things. WR104, we don't know if it's, okay, so we don't know if it's going to go gamma ray burst. We're not sure how stars do this. We think they might have to spin really rapidly. That has to do the way the explosion works and the way you have to wind up these magnetic fields in the core. And the faster this thing spins, the easier it is. This is my knowledge on this. I haven't read about this in a couple of years. And we don't know how fast that star spins. It may not be spinning fast enough. If it is, it may not be aimed at us. It's got, like I said, it has the spiral pattern around it. And it looks like we're seeing that almost face on, which means if the jet comes, it's aimed right at us. But if it's off even by 5 degrees, that jet could miss. So we don't know if the jet would hit us if it were a gamma ray burst, and it's far enough away that it may not be that big of a deal. It may not be a problem. So, there's a lot of ifs there. So, I think we're probably pretty safe. And if it does blow up, it's probably not going to do that for a million years anyway. So we got bigger problems to deal with, like coronavirus. And let me look up here again. This is perfect. Apollo 522 asks, just saw the headline, bookmarked for later, but have you any thoughts to share if you're aware of this claim? He has a link to a newspaper talking about Trans-Neptunian Objects, 139 new Trans-Neptunian Objects. Yes, I do have an opinion. In fact, if you check my blog tomorrow morning, I'll have written all about it. There are 316 Trans-Neptunian objects that were just found. These are small-ish, icy, rocky bodies out past Neptune. You may have heard of the Kuiper Belt, the Oort cloud. That's what these things are. Pluto is the biggest example of these. Arakoth, I love that. It sounds very Klingon. Arakoth is that weird double-lobed thing that New Horizons flew past last year and took all those amazing images of. These are trans-Neptunian objects, literally objects past Neptune. And we know of thousands, 1,000, something like that of these things. And what happened was the Dark Energy Survey, which is uses this camera called the Dark Energy Camera, is observing 5,000 square degrees, which is a large chunk of sky. And it's designed to look for dark energy and dark matter. It's looking at galaxies and exploding stars. But what they realized is that if there are any of these trans-Neptunian objects that pass through their field of view, they can see them. They're not designed to look for them. And it turns out finding them isn't that easy. You kind of want to optimize a survey to find them. You look every hour or something like that, and you can see this thing moving. The Dark Energy Camera doesn't do that. It actually avoids doing that, which makes this a pretty big challenge. But these are smart folks, and they figured out a way to do this. And I write all about how to do it. I won't tell you here because you can read about it tomorrow. And they found 316 of these things, and some of them were previously known. Some of them are new. They found 4 new Neptune Trojans, which I thought was awesome. These are bodies that share the exact same orbit as Neptune, but they're 60 degrees ahead or behind it in its orbit. And these are stable gravitational points called Lagrange points, Lagrange point 4 and 5. And I can never remember which is which, the one that is ahead and behind. Again, that's the kind of thing I just always look up. The Earth has one. Jupiter has a zillion of them. And so that's kind of neat that they found that. So you can read all about that tomorrow. Yes, it is true. And I will add that one of the astronomers, the second author, I think, on that paper is Michael Bernstein. I've known Michael Bernstein since we were both little kids. He was a friend of my brother's growing up. It is weird that in the 1940s, a lot of physics people working on quantum mechanics and nuclear physics were all from like the same area of Yugoslavia, Hungary, that area. A lot of Jewish emigres to the United States working on the Manhattan Project, and they all came from like within a few miles of each other, coincidentally. Well, Michael Bernstein and I grew up a few miles away. I was raised Jewish. We went to the same synagogue, and a third astronomer went to that same synagogue. And oh my God, I'm totally blanking on his name. This is embarrassing. But he studies gamma ray bursts. And when I was working on Hubble, I actually did he didn't wind up using the images I processed. It's complicated, but I worked on a similar thing that he worked on. And that was kind of funny. It's just, what are the odds of this? 3 professional astronomers coming from a single area. And they kind of work on, in some ways, the same thing. So I thought that was pretty funny. So you can read about these trans-Neptunian objects tomorrow. I thought it was pretty clever how they did all that. Pretty neat. Let's see, it's 3:50, so I'm going to go for like 10 more minutes. And then you know what? I may continue to do this. I'll look at the stats and see what's going on here. But I'll probably wind up doing this again Wednesday, maybe. And I don't want to buy a repeater, but I might. I'll figure out some way. My wife was like, you should really do one of these with the goats. People will like that. And it's like, I know people will like that. Everybody who comes to the house wants to see the goats. They don't give a damn about me or anything. My wife's cooking and the goats. That's what they care about. So I'll see what I can do about that. Oh, here's something interesting. I've thought about this. Steve Drapak asks, If we dropped a number of satellites one after another into a black hole that received a laser transmission of the satellite before it, corrected for the redshift, and passed the signal to the next satellite, kind of a bucket brigade, wouldn't we be able to get information from beyond the event horizon, assuming the satellites survive the environment? The answer is no. And I thought about this, and the thing about black holes is it's hard. This stuff is hard, and it gets complicated fast. But the bottom line is the speed of light is the same to all observers. So even if you have, say, somebody, where's my black hole of science? I haven't done one of these in a while, and I used to have a pile of stuff, I had a black squishy ball and a galaxy model and all kinds of stuff, and I don't have any of that stuff anymore. I have a makeup kit, makeup powder. That looks like a black hole. Look at that. Check it out. So if you have, and where's my little rubber rocket? I have a little squishy rocket. I don't know. But if you have like somebody here and say this is the event horizon of the black hole. This is where there's mass inside of this, and this is where the escape velocity equals the speed of light. In other words, anything on this side of the black hole has to go faster than light to get out. You can't go faster than light. So if you're in there, that's yours to keep. That's where you're staying. And so there's this limit called the event horizon. And if you're outside of that, you can't see what's going on inside of it because nothing can get out. And so the thing is, that's always going to be true. Even if you're really, really close to the event horizon and you drop in a probe that goes past the event horizon, it is basically moving faster than the speed of light, or is moving. It's moved past the event horizon is the way to think of it. There are a lot of different ways to phrase this. They're all confusing, and it all depends on your frame of reference. This is a mess. But once it's past the event horizon, it still has to, the signal still would have to come out faster than the speed of light to get to you, and it can't. So you're stuck. That's that. Unless black holes are wormholes, but then the other end of the wormhole is another black hole. So you're screwed anyway. So I don't think that'll work. This area of general relativity used to make me want to beat my head against a wall. A lot of the speed of light stuff isn't so bad. You know, if you accept that as you move closer to the speed of light, your mass appears to increase to somebody outside. That your time slows down compared to somebody who's not moving. That your length shrinks in the direction of travel. That's the one that is weird, that literally you shrink in the direction of travel. So if you have a rocket that's 100 meters tall and you're going this way near the speed of light to somebody outside looking at you from the side, you might be much shorter. They would measure your length as being shorter. That gets very confusing. Look up the barn door problem, the barn door paradox for general relativity. That is the one that just makes me want to pull my own head off and run around screaming, although I wouldn't be able to because that would be really awful. It is a mind-bending paradox. There is a solution to it, and it makes sense, but it is so hard to wrap your brain around. That's the one that gets a lot of people who study relativity leaving the field. It's a tough one. Big thanks for all you do for Lynn P. 0906 on Planet X. Oh dear. For a science class at a fundamentalist Christian school, and it blew my mind. Years later, I used you as a source for all my science facts. Wow. I can't vouch for all my science facts, but I can vouch for Planet X. Doesn't exist. That whole thing. Wow. It's been more than 20 years I've been writing about Planet X. It's in my first book, which came out in 2001. I had already been reading about it before then. Nibiru, right? This whole thing. Velikovsky and Sitchin and Nancy Leader and all of these people. And I even said back in 2003, before this thing was supposed to come and destroy all life on Earth, that was the deadline, May 15, 2003. I even said before that, I said, this is not going to happen. You're suddenly not going to be hearing about it. The two things I will absolutely 100% guarantee is that the people who really do believe this and sort of form the core cluster around their acolyte, or they're the acolytes around their prophet, whoever that might be, whoever's the one espousing this ridiculous doomsday stuff, that They will lose 90% of their followers, 95, 99% of their followers, but the acolytes around them will come together and protect them even more carefully, because that is always what happens in a cult, a doomsday cult. And that is, I was right. I'm not claiming, profound vision for this, because it's happened before. Any student of human nature when it comes to cults knows this kind of thing. The other prediction is that this aspect of this thing will die. The idea, by the way, is that there's a giant planet out there on a 3,600-year orbit. It swings in towards Earth and causes literally biblical disasters. The manna from heaven, parting the Red Sea, these were all real events that happened because of the interaction between this planet called Nibiru, or Planet X, and Earth. And it's all baloney. And it came from this guy, Immanuel Velikovsky, who was neither an archaeologist nor an astronomer. And he got basically all of his claims wrong, but it became sort of a counterculture sensation, and a lot of people believe it. But this got a lot of oomph in around 2000. There was a woman who was claiming this was real, and she made a date. She said it's going to happen in 2003 on May 15th. And I said, it won't, because we know this thing doesn't exist. And I said, but she will drop off the face of the earth. You will not hear anything more from her. You will. I mean, you have to go and find her, but nobody's going to give her any time. She's not going to be on the radio stations like she was. But this idea is too good to die. Velikovsky wrote about this in the 50s. Sitchin, this guy Zachariah Sitchin, who just basically took all these ideas and remashed them, and his claims were even more ridiculous. When was that? The 80s, I think? I'm not sure when he wrote his stuff. And then Nancy Lieder came along, and I said, this will not go away. And then I even said, it's somewhere on the internet, I said, watch what happens in 2012, which is going to be the Maya apocalypse. Somebody will use this. Somebody will talk about this planet being out there for the Maya apocalypse. And I was right. That was the actual time I was proud of myself, where I said, guaranteed this will turn up again, and I bet that's where it will. And sure enough, that's where it was. And sure enough, here we are. The Maya calendar didn't end, folks. It just ticked over. Just your chronometer, your odometer, your chronometer. I'm thinking Star Trek. Your odometer in your car ticks over. And it goes from 999 to 10,000. That's all that calendar did. I learned a lot about Maya calendars, though. And I learned some Mayan. I learned to speak a little bit of Mayan. It was an awesome language. It sounds like Vulcan. The Tun and the Baktun and Stolak. Tell me that's not a Vulcan name. Stolak. It means lizard. It's an iguana. I went to Palenque. The ziggurat there, Chichen Itza, is magnificent. That is a phenomenal trip if you can make it, when we can make trips again. And we were there not long after the vernal equinox, when that place is mobbed with a lot of people. And it was really cool. And the guide, I don't remember if I looked it up or if our guide told us that there are iguanas running around. It's Stolok. Xtolok. Kind of awesome. Science fiction fans have got to love Maya. It's such a great language. Let's see, it's 3:58. So, you know what? I think Velikovsky equals QAnon. No, I mean, I get your point. The QAnon stuff is like drug-addled. I mean, I don't want to make fun of these folks necessarily, but their theories are just wacky. They're just crackpot stuff. Velikovsky it's wrong and it's crackpot, but it's not bizarre. It's not, Hillary Clinton is running a child sex slavery in the basement of a pizza place in DC. Bizarre, right? So I get your point. I wouldn't make that analogy, but there you go. Judy says, I miss 2012. Yeah, I know, right? We were all so innocent then, just thinking the world was coming to an end for non-specific reasons. So I'm going to wrap this up. It's 4:00 my time. I just want to say thank you all for coming. Tomorrow, let me tell you what's going on. The blog is coming out every weekday, just like normal. Thursday will be a paid subscriber newsletter. I'm thinking of writing some stuff for an extra newsletter that might be free. I don't know. I've just got a long list of stuff. I've got to write about. I'll figure that out. I don't have any TV or radio appearances, but some science communicators got together and they're doing sort of a science happy hour. Kishore Hari, an old friend of mine in San Francisco, and he's organizing this. And I got email from him. I have to find, I don't know. I want to say it's at 2:00 my time tomorrow, but I don't know. I'll announce it on Twitter and everything. And it's going to be a live hangout with a bunch of different science communicators. I suspect we will just be sitting around drinking, talking about science and how awful the political situation is. So just if you're not following me on, if you're in this chat room and you're on my newsletter, you're not following me on Twitter, maybe you don't like all my politics. I don't know, but follow me on Twitter. That's where I make these kind of announcements. I'm not really on anything else. Instagram. So Bad Astronomer on Twitter, The Bad Astronomer on Instagram. I don't know. Look me up. If you go to about.me/PhilPlate, that has links to everything I do. And my newsletter is badastronomy.substack.com. It's free on Mondays. Sign up, sent right to your email box. Paid subscriptions on Thursdays. I want to do more of these, and I've got some ideas to do with them, not just the goats, but some other things, maybe some giveaways and things like that. As long as we're all stuck at home and going stir crazy, why not? So if I do another one of these, I might do it on Wednesday. We'll see. But stay tuned. I'll let y'all know. I think that's it. I'm just looking around. There's nothing on my desk we're talking about except this is it. I should say this is how much sanitizer I have. I've had this bottle for years. And I sometimes refill it, but this is what I travel with and wash my hands with on an airplane or something like that. And then all of a sudden, we hit this critical mass with coronavirus in this country, and all of a sudden you can't find hand sanitizer for love or money. And so it's like, this is all I got left. So, if it gets restocked, I'll have to do that. Oh, hi, Craig DeForest, everybody, who is, a very smart person. He studies the sun. He's a solar astronomer. In fact, if there's anybody who knows more about the corona than any of us, it's Craig. And he says mix vodka with hand lotion. I've heard that, but you can't get strong enough vodka. You need 60% vodka to do anything, I think. And so you'd need like really strong vodka. And I like Tito's. That's my brand. And I thought I should just email Tito's and say, send me vodka and I'll continue to talk about it. But they were sending out tweets saying, don't do this. You can't make it strong enough. But anyway, this is just for coming back from shopping and stuff like that. So that'll last me forever. I've just been washing my hands. Soap is still the best thing, folks. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a virologist, but I know this. You should listen to them. And there's a lipid layer of fat that protects the virus. And soap just tears that apart almost instantly. And so if you wash your hands with soap, the reason you have to wash for long enough, you have to make sure it gets to everything in there, all the little nooks and crannies. As a matter of fact, my lotion is not in this room. Damn it. I have hand lotion. You should wash your hands and then hand lotion so you don't get what we call Colorado finger, where you get splits in your fingertips. That's from the dry air here. So that's what I suggest. And Craig, if you have a good lotion, recipe, yeah, let me know. I think you can use Everclear. And so I saw somebody make a video about this. Don't use vodka, or don't use this vodka, use this vodka. And it's like, that's Everclear. It's not vodka. That is 200, that is grain alcohol. I don't know if I haven't seen that stuff in years. I don't even know if it's available anymore. So this has become an adult conversation. Kids, don't make vodka hand sanitizer unless you're 21 or over. I don't know. So that's it. Check me out on Twitter tomorrow for that science. Look at me, I'm touching my face too. You know what I've been doing? This is my thought. I was going to tweet this joke, and then I thought I don't really want to tweet too many coronavirus jokes. But I said, you know what I'm doing now is I'm washing my hand really, really thoroughly as soon as I get up, and then touching my face 2,000 times right then, and then not for the rest of the day. And then I know what I'm saying, because you touch your face like 2,000 times a day. So, use soap, wash your hands, keep your distance, drink lots of water, folks. That's another thing. People were talking about that a lot on the internet. Make sure you're hydrated, like a year ago, and all of a sudden that stopped. And it's like, no, you should stay hydrated at home. Exercise if you can. Take a few minutes to walk around. Or in my newsletter today, I talk about this. Try what works for you. Oh, where I should say I'm practicing what I'm preaching. Now, first of all, for those of you who are of a certain age, how awesome is this T-shirt? How awesome is this shirt? My wife got this for me for my birthday last year, and I love it. This was my favorite show when I was a kid. I've still got Eagle models here someplace. I don't know. But that's not what I was going to show you. I was also going to show you that I am indeed wearing PJs. I'm repping my brands here. I've also got Star Trek PJs and Captain America shirt. You'll see me in different brands here if I do more of these. But yeah, this is what I wear every day. And thermal socks, because it's usually chilly in my office. And that's it. And I should say, Steve Drapek, there you go. Shirt brings back memories. Gary Hyslop. We got some other Alphans here, some Moonbase Alphans. I've actually been to a Space 1999 convention. I could talk about that maybe next time, but then again, nobody under 40 has ever seen the show, so maybe not. But we can talk Star Trek or whatever. Maybe I'll do a theme chat and just talk about different things. I was thinking about, it's getting late, I know. I was thinking about doing a Picard chat, but I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. I'm caught up. I have some questions about it some stuff that happened on the last show, but I don't, I live out in the country. I don't meet up with my friends. I used to watch it in grad school, Next Generation. We would talk about the show, and now I don't do that anymore. And it's weird. And I watched The Ready Room with Will Wheaton. You all know Will. He is delightful on that show. The glee in his voice and eye and face when he is talking about Star Trek is palpable. And I really like The Ready Room after Picard. It's a lot of fun to watch that. Oh my God! I just saw this in my screen. I was talking about Sean Carroll. There's one of his books right there, The Big Picture. This is a great book, by the way. All about the origin of the universe and all kinds of stuff. Time Zero. He writes about why time flows forward. Anyway. If you have ideas, stuff you want me to talk about, tweet me, leave a message. You know what? Let me put the URL for the newsletter. There we go. That's the thread for this chat in the newsletter. Leave me a comment there or whatever, and I'll think about it and try to different things. I don't know how long I can keep this up because I need to be writing. I've got stuff to write, but this is fun, and it's and if it's helpful, then do what I can. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for participating, asking questions, following me, reading my stuff, whatever. I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Bye. Live long and prosper, and stay healthy.